Welcome to Arc Photo Pod, the architectural photography podcast. My name is Jordan Powers. I'm an architectural photographer and video producer based in the Southeast United States. In this first inaugural episode of the podcast, I interview world-renowned photographer and meme king, Auckland, New Zealand-based Simon Devitt. Simon had flown out to Los Angeles to photograph a couple residential architecture projects, and I flew out there to assist him. Unfortunately, we had some weather that was not cooperating that week, and we had to postpone a couple of the shoots. Fortunately, though, during that downtime, I decided it'd be a great idea to start a podcast, and Simon was gracious enough to come by to the podcast studio I rented in downtown Los Angeles and sat down with me for an hour-long interview. And this, what you're about to hear now, is what was left over after I cut out all the awkward stuff from the interview. If you're not yet following Simon on Instagram, you can do so at Simon_Devitt with 2 T's, and you can follow me on Instagram at Jordan Powers without the vowels. Enjoy this episode with Simon Devitt. All right, so we're in LA. You flew here from New Zealand. When did you come in? You came in Saturday?
We arrived late Friday.
Okay. Late Friday.
So we had our first full day, not doing too much on Saturday.
Yeah.
But it feels like we've been here for a lot longer already. There's quite a lot to do, a lot to see. We like walking, so we've walked the streets a lot.
Yeah.
We like art and architecture and eating. And Los Angeles is quite good for that. So
okay, so you're in LA. You've got 3 shoots. Well, you had 3 shoots this week. A couple weeks, maybe a month or so back, you posted that you were going to be in LA soon, and I reached out to you offering to assist. And I don't know what I think mainly because we're going to be mentoring together in a few months, and I kind of wanted to see what your process is like. Not so much asking questions and like learning from you, but more just observing, like just how you work, how you think about things. I've watched some interviews you've done in the past, and you talk a little bit about your process. But I just thought it'd be a good opportunity to actually just be a fly on the wall and help you out where needed, and bring things if you needed additional help. Anything I could do to add some value to you. So
I'll just give a bit of context to what you just said, because I think it's really interesting that I've come up with this offer, and you've come on board for this online mentorship, and there's a lot of how we exist that is solely online, and we get like we were saying in the elevator on the way up, we get a sense of someone and we feel like we know them, but there's no reality to that. And what I like about you approaching me to meet me here in LA to do some work together to assist me on this shoot is that before this mentorship kicks off, you'll have an actual sense of who I am, albeit in a short space of time. You'll have an actual context. You'll see some of my processes. You will have asked me some questions, I'm sure, and we'll get to hang out a little bit and chat. And for other people in the mentorship, they won't have had that opportunity. So I like that you took the bull by the horn and have done that. And it's not an imperative that we needed to do that.
Yeah.
But it was an opportunity. And so I appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned briefly in my email, I do invest a lot in my own education, whether it's like taking courses or mentoring with people. Obviously you started offering, and I believe you've been doing mentoring for a while, but is this the first year you've done like an official kind of program that you're rolling out where how you have it structured now?
This is the first mentorship in its official capacity and naming it that way.
Okay.
But typically the structure of the work I've done in the past, 10 years of lecturing at Auckland University, other workshops that I've done, the capacity, the intent is around mentorship, around that kind of creative environment where it's, I think if you're teaching the right way, I'm not the only one offering something up. I'm not the only one who's I'm learning too. So everyone's learning. So I think that's the kind of environment that I like to create, is that you're not just taking, you're giving as well by virtue of an exchange.
What kind of things are you teaching at the university? Are you still teaching, or was that?
I finished that up a couple of years ago, and that was solely presented as an opportunity to create a paper that existed before in name, but the content I was able to create. And it's a paper intended for third-year architecture students at the architecture school. And so I could have created anything. I mean, quite a remarkable opportunity, and not one you get handed every day. And I saw the opportunity for not learning about technical stuff, because that would put me to sleep. So it had to inspire me to talk about things that I'm passionate about. And for me, that's really, certainly at that point and still today, is about photographic narrative, around storytelling, around creating pictures that engage people, that create questions rather than answers. So we talk about ambiguity and where that knife edge is. And there's a lot of structure around different exercises that sort of eke that out of people, that allow them to explore for themselves rather than being told or led in a direction.
Being given a formula to follow the process. Okay.
Yeah, exercises that on the surface have a very simple appearance and could appear almost childlike, but they're playful and they're useful. And in the sequence they're offered in and worked on, it's choreographed in a way that you needed to learn this one first in order to move on to this next one, and then the semblance of all those things together at the end really contributed to the much bigger picture.
And did this opportunity come about through your photography and just through just kind of building a name for yourself in your community?
Partly that, because I think we exist solely on reputation. We're as good as the last picture. We're guns for hire unless we've got written contracts, and some of us do with some clients for sure. But largely it was through the community of photography that meets architecture, so working a lot with different architects, and the interaction between the professional side of architecture and the academic side, which Auckland University is very, very good at. And then I had already initiated a photography prize at the creative arts and the creative arts part of the university, which covers music, dance, photography, or fine arts, architecture. And so for, I think, 16 years now, there's been a prize at the university in photography available to that arts faculty, or those various arts faculties. And so two years into that, the offer came up from the university to create this paper. Yeah. So
when you say create a paper, and I'm just not educated in this space, so the idea was you were going through this in order to put together a paper that would be what's this paper you're referring to?
It's like an elective paper, like a course.
Okay.
In your third year as an architecture student, and you get to choose a few different things. You can choose drawing, photography, depending on that year what's on offer.
Okay.
But the photography paper had a name, and so it existed, and it had always existed in various guises, but the structure of the content was offered to me, and I could create that. Had to go through a series of rigorous kind of audits to make sure it suited the curriculum and that it was legitimate and not some weird thing. But everyone seemed to love it. So, and went from strength to strength each year.
And did you find, once that program ended, did you just find that, I can't remember how many years ago you said that was, but did you find that once that program ended, you kind of just still had that interest in teaching, and then the mentorship kind of evolved from there? Or?
Yeah, during that 10-year period, I learned very quickly that I couldn't be without the education part. Like, I think once you hook into that way of engaging and that exchange, it opens up other doors to understanding that there are so many different ways to do things and so many ways to collaborate and engage and learn, and I wouldn't be without it. And so during that time, I did do other workshops too outside of the university. I had the Auckland Art Gallery approach me to do public-facing workshops with them for their membership and growing their membership. So I ended up doing a lot of workshops with them as well.
Okay, and then there's a phrase that I don't remember exactly how it goes, but if you want to learn something, teach it. I found that as well, and like the things that I'm not like doing any official like programs or anything like that where I'm teaching, but I'll do some mentoring from time to time with people who are trying to transition out of the real estate photography world more into architecture. So and I agree, when you have to reframe something and articulate it in a way that helps other people understand for their own education or their own business or whatever, it helps you, I don't know, learn how to implement things in your own way. And part of the reason like I even end up reaching out to you was part of that. Like I would have never thought to just reach out to somebody to offer to assist if I didn't suggest other people do that in the past. You know, and so that comes from wherever that advice that you give to others. So for me, it's like, well, I'm gonna kind of walk the talk. Like if I'm going to suggest other people go and offer to assist people and just reach out to other photographers who they admire or who they want to learn from, you know, I'm going to do it myself. And, you know, there's sometimes that can be an investment as well. But again, that never would have come had I not offered that advice to other people. So I definitely see where that comes from, how you learn more when you teach. With the official mentoring program, I can't remember. Do you have an official name for it? Is it just kind of
It's just the Simon Devitt online mentorship.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. But you have 3 different tiers though that you're doing with that.
3, 2 mainly, but the third one is one-off.
Spots. Got it. Like. And how did you determine? Because as I was looking through the different options that you were offering, you know, I had to kind of just analyze which one would work best for me. But how did you decide? Is this just basically what you've been teaching? Is this an extension of what you were teaching at the university, or is this kind of just what you've, I don't know, just picked up or in your other coaching experiences? Like, how did you decide on this particular format of how you're going to be doing things?
Yeah, I was able to look back from a reasonable distance at that 10 years of teaching, and it's cumulative, right? Like after year 1, you go, wow, okay, well, this is what year 1 looked like, and now this is year 2. And certain things get affirmed, and you go, that worked really well, and I really enjoyed that, and they seemed to enjoy it, and the auditing process at the end of the year extracted feedback that was really critical to how that functioned, and so things were either changed or refined or left exactly the same. And so the learning process through the 10 years is cumulative compounding, not sort of 1 + 1 = 2. It's more like 1 + 1 = 11. And so after 10 years of doing that, there's a real sense of what is successful within that, and then how can that context be applied to a different environment. So the university environment for third-year architecture students is a very specific environment to have a paper that works in that context for 4 grades, essentially. In a mentorship program, there are no grades, for example. So it is a very different environment. And then what was I inspired by myself or motivated by to do next that would be a genuine offer that I could feel really passionate about, that I know would land with other people, or at least give that my best shot. And so taking all those learnings from the various workshops and lecturing at university into something purely online, and we established a real way of learning through COVID, with everything being online, everyone being online, and I have done a lot of interviews online with this reading room Instagram live interview that I've been doing for the last 15 years, and
that's been going on for 15 years.
Yeah, wow. For the most part in an actual real live sense in people's living rooms with people attending.
Really?
And then because of COVID, I thought, why not take it online, and then I can talk to anyone anywhere at any time. And that's that's worked really, really beautifully. So
let's step away from architecture for a second. So this, you've written some books, you've put together some books. I've heard some interviews talking about that process a little bit. The reading room, obviously you have an interest in reading and writing. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Like, where did that come from? Was that maybe a career path down the road, or has this always just kind of been a side passion of yours? Or
reading room really came about because I've collected a lot of books, and I've stopped collecting because I don't have an endless capacity to store hundreds of books. But I've got around 1,000 books now, and it's not a massive amount, but it's a number that's got a critical mass for me, and I move some on and bring some in. But the main thing around that is it just felt very much a library for one, and I just felt like that's a little bit underutilized. And then the extension of that was, well, these books have all come from various places. They have stories behind them. If I was to talk about where some of these books came from and how I brought them home, or who I met in order to, even discover that book existed, it's a lovely way into someone's life. It's a filter on someone's world, quite a personal world, like the books you have next to your bed, what you're reading at the moment. They give great insights into someone's, a sense of someone and who they are. And so when I talk to people, it's not that it's purely
about the context of the book.
About the book. It's really, a way into them and a conversation about them, which I love.
That's really interesting. I'd never considered that. Yeah, I'm not much of a reader myself. I'm more of a listener and a talker. I just enjoy talking to people and just having conversations, just seeing where the conversation takes you. Like that, I would have never guessed that before. Like I said, I'm not into the reading or writing, so I haven't admittedly watched any of the reading room things, but I've seen you've been doing those, and it seems to have at least a little bit of a following of people who attend those things. When you were doing them in person, or are you still doing them in person now that COVID's kind of?
No, I've kept it online.
Okay.
And haven't been too many recently, but I fairly consistently add to it. And the main, I'm not opposed to interviewing absolutely anybody, but the main sort of driver has been to interview people that make things, makers of things. So architects, photographers, painters, sculptors. There's a whole raft of different people.
So I think one of the things that's always attracted to me is just the way you present yourself online, whether you want to call that a brand or whatever. The memes aside, but just I see you doing this reading room thing. I've seen interviews where you just articulate yourself very well. You have very thoughtful way of explaining things. Obviously that comes with experience, but even just now talking to you and hearing that a lot of the purpose of this reading room is more just to use it as an avenue to have a more in-depth conversation and get to know somebody a little better. That's interesting to me. I see others where there's clearly, a lot of people, including myself, are still trying to kind of find our voice and find ourselves. And I'm just curious about what does that process of like self-discovery look like for you over the years? Like, what are some things you can kind of, point to or look back on that have made you, just do this work and just kind of be yourself and not have to put on a facade? Does any of what I'm asking make sense? It's a hard question to articulate, and I'm not quite sure how.
And I get it, and I hear you, and it's a hard question to answer, but it's because we only know ourselves, and we're very up. That's all up in our grill the whole time. So to get perspective on how that's come about would be fairly difficult, except to say that I've constantly avoided convention, and I've constantly avoided doing things the way that I think they should be done, rather than doing them the way that feels right to me for whatever reason, and not even knowing half the time whether that's a good way or a bad way. Just it occurs to me to do it this way. So I've constantly done it the way I think it should be done, not for anyone else but me. Because if I enjoy the pictures, for example, I'm pretty sure other people will too. So I'm my best and my worst critic. And so I set up that environment for myself I mean, even now, unintentionally, just the way I am, the way I do stuff. Going right back, school, going to primary school and high school was really just an opportunity for me to go and eat my lunch and play with girls. I really had no intention or aspiration to get A's or go on to university. I'd really thought about what it would be like to see the world as pictures, and that came from my dad being a really keen photographer, an amateur photographer, photographing us as a family where we went as kids. And I went to school here in the States when I was 6 and 7, so we lived here for a bit.
Where at?
Over on the East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah, Washington State,
okay.
Washington DC, sorry, and New York. And so I just wanted to experience, seeing the world as pictures led me to wonder what it would be like to be a photographer. As a kid, not really knowing you could be a photographer of architecture or have any sense of that. But then finding out, well, I can develop film, I can sell cameras, I can assist photographers, and just glean from all of those experiences my place and how I see myself and what I would like to do with that. And so it's just been very piecemeal, but just not letting any stone be unturned, and simply doing things the way I think they should be done rather than living through expectation.
Yeah.
And I think one of the benefits of being in a small country like New Zealand is absolutely that it's a fairly level playing field, or certainly was when I was growing up. People, there's 2 degrees of separation, not 6. It's a very small place to grow up and exercise your curiosity, I guess. And there's no greater tool that I know of than a camera to make you feel very present and really engage in asking that very curious question, or I wonder what this looks like as a picture. And so I've been doing that for a long time now.
When you began doing architecture photography, I don't even want to say exclusively, but when that became your career, was this something you were still like cognizant of as you were growing in this career, or did you? I guess where I'm coming from is like, look, I'm an American photographer. I started out photographing weddings and portraits like most American photographers, and then I started shooting real estate eventually, and then I was doing real estate, and then builders and designers and architects would contact me to do their homes, and then eventually I fell in love with doing exclusively architecture. And now I mostly do exclusively commercial architecture, occasionally residential. But through this entire process, it's me competing with, however many photographers. Branding is very important here in the States. Marketing yourself, like putting a perception out there of yourself that, hopefully aligns with your potential clients. There's like all this psychological, stuff you have to, it seems, and maybe it's just from my perspective that you have to kind of jump through. Did you ever experience that, or have you kind of just been doing your own thing from the beginning?
I very rarely look in the rear vision mirror or the wing mirror. So I'm really, and I do because it's important, because you get a perspective, and but mostly I'm just looking ahead and interested in what I'm doing. I taught myself, and I continue to teach myself, and I did from a very young age, walking with a camera. I mean, there was no simpler way to put it than I would walk suburban cul-de-sacs, rural back blocks and city streets, avenues, just me and the camera, engaged with the world, being present, being curious, and wondering what something will look like as a picture, seeing what we're all up to, how we play, how we live, how we work, where we do those things, seeing each of us as important as the built environment we're in, also as important as the wobbly stuff around it, the landscape, the context for that. So those 3 things I viewed from a very early age as really important ingredients in the ability to make sense of everything around me. And nothing is any different now in doing what I do. as it was when I started.
Well, but at some point, so maybe let me specify a little bit. So at some point, people had to start hiring you. And, you're having those conversations early on. Maybe the first client that calls you, you've got to have the discussion about pricing and what the process looks like for you. Or, I'm just curious as to if you had to put I know you don't look back on that stuff very often, but for the sake of everybody listening, because I haven't heard this question asked of you before specifically, if you could put yourself back there for a few moments, did you ever find yourself in a position when you were first starting out in this career where, obviously you're still figuring out everything like that, but was there ever this sense of I need to market myself, or I need to brand myself a certain way? Do I need to create a certain perception? Or was it just you like my pictures, you can hire me and this is how much it costs? So was it just as simple as that? Am I overthinking it, how I overthink everything? No,
not at all. It's a really good question. And for me, how that looked was I would come across buildings that were new and clearly designed by an architect, and and they're in the public domain, in the public sphere. I was able to, because it's still illegal to climb a fence and photograph someone's house. You can't just do that. You need to be invited in. And so there would be, a new commercial building or an apartment building or something like that where I could blag my way in, get some interiors of the public spaces and the building itself, and shoot it how I thought it should be shot, and then going to the architect and saying, listen, I've photographed your building, wonder if I could come in and show you these pictures. And so it turns what is effectively quite a cold call into a warm ego massaging call very quickly, because you've seen their building in a different way to how they possibly see it. Well, that was my assumption. And certainly when I've made a series of pictures or a set of pictures for an architect who has had this building up close in their grill for 3-4 years, sometimes more, and then they're able to see it in a new way or in a fresh way.
Or they've forgotten it altogether because it was a project that was finished up years ago.
Yeah, and they're just seeing all the mistakes. Their reaction is priceless.
And then to grow your business from there, is that pretty much just how it all started? And then it just kind of grew from there? People,
Yeah, it was just really then people talking to each other, another architects, look at this guy, look at these pictures he made, and then so on and so forth, and then the marketing part of that was really just, I'm still making it up as I go. I'm just doing it how I think it should be done. I still feel like I don't know very much. I still feel like I'm just getting started. I like how that feels now. Initially, there was some pressure I would put on myself to know more or do it a certain way, but I just was really driven by doing it how I think it should be done. And in that marketing sense, I cottoned on to the idea very early that people will always remember the experience they had more than who gave them that experience or who was behind it. And so this is even before I started specifically shooting architecture. I shot some pictures of a new hotel building, really quite a cool new building in the Auckland landscape at the time, and I knew the penthouse on the top floor wasn't yet fitted out. It was just still a concrete shell. So I went to the developer and I said, I've got some really beautiful pictures of your building, and I'm quite keen to have an event to try and market myself, have a bit of a soiree where I can invite people that I'd like to be there, to have an audience and give them an experience. And so he said, whatever you like, just go for it. Noise control came in at the end because I had a DJ there. I had friends dressed as waiters serving hors d'oeuvres and handing out drinks. I had a lot of my pictures framed and an auction on the night, making money for the Child Cancer Foundation. I had an art gallery who was showing some of my work at the time talk about me instead of me talking about myself. I had sent out the invitations on bulk loaded 35mm film canisters where they would pull out the invite from the roll of film, including asking for their T-shirt size so that when they turned up, there was a gift bag with a T-shirt with my branding on it. I did that, and I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought, wouldn't that be cool?
You obviously, I mean, you didn't know what you were doing, but going back to that unconventional way of doing things, and how long ago was that? That was what you said, 10 years ago, or
no,
you didn't put a date. This is before that even.
Oh, a long time ago.
Wow,
like 20 plus.
And this was when you were still establishing your business. This is at the very beginning.
Wow. I don't know what the hell I was doing. I had a website. I had a friend who made the website. It was very, it's kind of a weird website, but it had my pictures on it. I know that much. Had some music in the background. CD-ROMs was still a thing, so that might give an indication of when we're talking about.
Wow.
So people in the gift bag walked away with a CD-ROM that I think you could link it to the website then. I'm not sure. But I know we had a really good time, and it was a great way to give people an experience they definitely didn't forget.
And you've probably built a lot of residual business and friendships from that one random experiment that you tried. Marketing.
Yeah, great way to put it. It's literally an experiment. And I think what I learned from that is that everything we do is an experiment, and then the clients we have are paying for our experiments, and everything's a really informal agreement in a way that I love in that creative sense. I mean, we surround things in quite official agreements, of course, and probably more here in the States than in New Zealand. But I think we're just doing enough so that we can get to that point of that the important stuff, which is the creative moments that we get to do. And so we set up that environment to be somewhere where we can successfully engage with that question. I wonder what this looks like as a picture, and hang around long enough to in that house or that building to witness those moments, capture those moments. And for me, it is really heavily about moments. The building's not going anywhere, but we can move, and then everything surrounding that minute by minute is changing. Unless we're there to capture it or witness it or have that opportunity, then we possibly won't capture it or won't see it. So I like hanging around. I arrive early and I leave late. We usually get a day, sometimes two, depending on the project.
Or the weather. And try and get some at least interesting weather. It doesn't need to be blue skies all the time. I kind of like the moody stuff. My preference is not for rain, but for something in between, where there's some sun and some cloud. A little bit of drama.
A little bit of drama is good.
Are you looking for you mentioned moments, like are you just looking as you're walking through a place or sitting there just observing something, are you just looking for that thing that catches your eye?
Everything that's happened up to that moment of me arriving has formulated enough of a plan. And so there's a small amount of plan, but mostly there's just me making it up as I go, just being present, just reacting to moments, seeing things, seeing it as a picture really quickly, making the picture and moving on. I'm very rarely bracketing any exposures. I'm very rarely just sitting there for very long. It's just me and the camera. I have to remind myself I've got other lenses half the time. So it's usually me in a 50mm tilt shift, and I'm away. And walking, standing still. Early and late, it's a bit more manic, which I like. There's kind of there's a lot happening, and there's a lot of excitement, and I like moving around and just capturing that richness and those atmospheres that the architects have really worked very hard to create.
See, and that's what I want to observe, because it I don't know if you would look at it this way necessarily, but for me, it seems like it'd be very freeing. We've a lot of the architectural photographers here, the younger generations, the 30s, 40s, 50s even, a lot of the stuff we learned, a lot of us are coming from a real estate background, and we learned how to do architecture photography through courses. Like, this is a specific way you look at things. We learn about things through the Facebook groups and the YouTube channels. You know, these are the processes you do. This is what the expectation is. This is how you should be charging. You know, you shouldn't be shooting as many photos as you can. You have to shoot a very specific amount of photos, because then you're overworking. Like, there's just so many processes that we're supposed to be following that, for me personally, I'm just speaking for myself. Like, I think what I'm most looking forward to observing with you is like just how you can just like be free of all that and just say, I'm here, this is what I'm seeing, and this is how I'm going to respond to it, and then this is what I'm going to do with that frame that I captured. Like, this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah. I don't know any different. I mean, that's just how I've always done it. I know that works for me. It's not for everyone. I mean, everyone's got their own formula, and that's come about through, as you've pointed out, different ways of doing things. And I've gone through different experiences to get to where I am now, and it's always evolving. It's never exactly the same. It's certainly from a metaphysical level. I'm showing up to a house. I've never been there in that space in that time. I'm just in that place in those moments. Mm-hmm. In that time, nothing else existed before that for me, you know, until then. You know, it's a very short space of time, that one day almost, you know, from early till late. The homeowners have, you know, albeit that it's probably quite a new house and they're still working out how to live in it. They've seen a lot more than me, but I'm just showing up, seeing it for the first time, and from a very naive kind of blinkered perspective, just looking at it through a certain set of filters, you know. Mm-hmm. It's a one-eyed proposition at like best.
There's the quotable for that. So to respect your time, can't do an interview without asking about memes. So I'm going to try to take a different approach though. You mentioned the unconventional thing. Do you feel like and obviously they're enjoyable. Everybody loves them. They're fun to find, and it's fun to just the laugh you get even when you're just sitting there by yourself, like seeing a good meme. But for you, did that? I don't suspect it was intentional that you're like, I'm going to start posting memes because I think that, you know, clients will like this. They'll see my personality. I don't think it was that intentional, but I feel like that's very much part, as odd as it may be to most people. I think that is kind of a part of your brand, and I'm curious if your clients respond to that as well, and like they maybe even share that sense of humor, and because it does give a glimpse into what kind of things you're into, what kind of things you like. It's not so much different than a book. Like you post a series of memes. I know what your sense of humor is. I can randomly tag you in a picture of a urinal, or I'm sorry, a hand dryer in a bathroom, and you'll laugh because you know exactly, it's a language almost. So do you find that also to be an extension of your marketing, I guess, if you will?
It is now, and absolutely, as you say, not intentional. When it came about through COVID again, COVID gave birth.
That just started with COVID?
It really, well, I'd been collecting in the memes since 2014, I think, or 15, just for me, because I like that sort of stuff, you know, and so when it came time to, I thought, well, maybe some of my friends will enjoy these, and you know, you couldn't go and see your friends, but you could send them stuff, and so I started sending some memes to friends, and they were like, "You got to show these to people. This is hilarious." And then, you know, I started putting them in my stories, and again, unintentionally, what I assumed and what I wanted to distinguish was, yes, the photography, and yes, that's important, and there's a serious element to that, and there's a formality to how I want to show that and what I show. And then I thought, okay, well, Instagram's got this stories thing that feels quite separate, so I'll just put the memes in there, and maybe, you know, every now and then a little something to do with the photography as well, so people remember, you know, the other thing that I do as well. So the stories bar on Instagram is really just, for me, it's where I get.
It's a great vehicle for that.
It's a great vehicle for that, yeah, and I just get to show that part of me that the photography struggles to show.
Yeah, and I can log in. I don't go on Instagram all that often, but I can look at my stories. You're usually one of the first ones to pop up because I'm usually going through every single one of them. it's just a great break in the day. I even have a designer friend who is following you and will like reshare things that you post. But it's just funny because I think it is a language that especially the internet culture, just the way that like we all speak to each other in a way. So I was just curious how your clients respond to that, but I think that answers it. I mean,
I just think if you're able to find a way to authentically express yourself, that different parts of you, humor's a great leveler, and it's a great way to communicate with people. You know, it's a way into people's lives that everyone understands really quickly. There's aspects of it being self-evident without having to say too much, and the memes seem to do that quite nicely.
They do. It's a great way to kind of like you were talking earlier with the reading room. You know, you're using like a different vehicle to get deeper into a person's life, and you can do that with a simple meme.
Yeah, and then the way people engage with those, 200 plus messages a day reacting to different memes that I've posted, and I brought that on myself. I realize people now call them Devitts and not memes, which is really
I've noticed that. Yeah, people have. I'll show you the text when we wrap up. Somebody used your name as a verb. That wasn't even meme related necessarily, so I didn't quite understand it, but it was funny nonetheless. I'll show it to you.
Yeah, cool.
But I'll try to see if I can come up with a funny meme for this episode. It was a little bit of a rocky beginning when I was all nervous at the beginning, but
both of us.
There's a meme in here somewhere that I'm sure we'll figure out. But I appreciate you swinging by, taking time out of your trip, and sitting down with me, the first person I've talked to for this thing. So yeah,
I'm sure it'll just get better from here. Thanks, Jordan.
Well, I appreciate it.